Good morning. Thank you. Welcome to the King Institute for Faith and Culture. We're very delighted that you came this morning to hear a very special speaker. It's usually the case that each year the students choose 2 faculty members to give lectures, and this is our second one for the year. Before I begin, I would like to welcome some guests here. Professor Dotterweich's in-laws are here with one of their neighbors, and so I'd like to welcome the Moores, and I think his mom's supposed to come as well, and his wife, but I don't see them at this point. That wasn't meant to be funny, was it? Last week, the phrase that came to mind when Professor McIntyre was here was the term spring cleaning. And I think the phrase for me this week is the term wild rumpus. And this is not because of open displays of disorderly conduct by our speaker today. His juvenile records are lamentably sealed. But a rumpus of the mind, akin to how the famous Hedley Lamar in that cult classic Blazing Saddles described himself. My mind is aglow with whirling, transient nodes of thought careening through a cosmic vapor of invention. It is a raging torrent flooded with rivulets of thought cascading into a waterfall of creative alternatives. More seriously, our speaker's mind is a mind of imagination marked by curiosity, merriment, exuberance, and childlike play. This attitude finds its expression in ways almost too numerous to capture. Acting, his joy in words and word play, his playing the piano, his love of rare books, his engagement with his children. Chaucer described his scholar, the clerk of Oxenford, as in this way: "Gladly will he learn, and gladly teach ya." And our speaker today has a passion for learning and for teaching, and particularly for Christian education. For him, history is a story. He captures you with the story, not just with the facts. And I know this firsthand, as many of you do, from having the privilege of hearing his lectures while team teaching with him last semester in the humanities course. And he doesn't simply talk about events, he commemorates them anytime he can. Any excuse for a celebration, for a party. Partly through joy, partly through hospitality. He just enjoys being a host, and he'll talk about that in just a little bit. For the student of Tudor and Elizabethan history, this has been a season for celebration and commemoration. King James's authorized version of the Bible, Shakespeare's death, John Knox's birthday, the Protestant Reformation, the births and deaths of Scottish Reformation martyrs, as if he chose this field of study because of the opportunities it afforded to celebrate the really big anniversaries, the 400 and the 500 years. Organizing conferences, giving papers, this has been his staple for the last few years. And in a word, just throwing big academic parties. And if I am prophetic at all, in the coming years, you might expect more parties in honor of the life and times of Copernicus, John Calvin, Michelangelo, Machiavelli, William Tyndall, Galileo, René Descartes, and William Harvey. Who knows, in 3 years you might even be hearing papers on the invention of the slide rule 400 years ago. You remember that, Dr. Pickard? I remember that too, yes. It's appropriate that he's our speaker today as we enter into a landmark year in our own history as a college and university, the 150th anniversary of our founding. 500 years ago to the year, Quentin Metzis painted the portrait of Erasmus of Rotterdam, one of the great Christian humanists of the early modern period. In our midst, we have someone who has imbibed this spirit of Christian humanism. And though he is often imitated, he is still just one of a kind. Please welcome with me Professor Martin Dotterweich, and let the wild rumpus begin.
Three people already left. That's how bad this is. I want to first welcome my mother and tell her she can come sit down up here. As soon as my aunt comes, you can come sit up here. Thank you, Craig. Also, my introducer is already leaving. That's how bad this is. He told me he would, and he wasn't lying. I have a good memory. I actually have a great memory. This gets me into trouble. I'll be at a party. I do go to parties now and again, twice. And I'll ask somebody about something obscure that I remember about them. I'll remember their mother's surgery, or their son's trip to Argentina, or their interest in calligraphy, or their purchase of a new computer. When I bring these things up, it can have two effects. Sometimes the person is understandably creeped out, makes an excuse about needing to get back to the snack table, and beats a hasty retreat. Other times, the person will simply express surprise at my memory of such minutiae. I'm a historian, I tell them. I remember for a living. That line generally gets the same round of dull indifference at parties that it just got here. So thanks. I feel like I'm at a party now. It's good. You can come sit. About a year ago, I learned that I'd be giving this lecture, and I knew early on that I wanted to talk about memory. Memory and history, do these go together? Does my calling stem from my recall? For a long time, I've thought that there was a connection, and here was a chance to be more intentional about my inquiry. Over the past months, I've been thinking a lot about memory in anticipation of this talk. I've been asking people about memory. I've asked classes, I've asked colleagues, I've asked friends, I've asked strangers. The strangers were creeped out too. Sometimes my question has been focused and direct. What's the first thing you remember? What could you stand up here and talk about for an hour from memory? Well, you remember that you didn't experience firsthand. Sometimes, on the other hand, I've thrown out the question more generally. Memory, talk to me. While that last version does make me feel like a character in a cop drama, it does tend to get the same look of blank incomprehension it just did from Jamie Osborne. In addition to talking, I've read a great deal about memory, thinking about this very moment. I've sorted through a variety of books, from an account of a memory contest, to a book about memory in the church, to the novel Herzog by Saul Bellow, to a survey of numerous passages about memory in the Bible. The classic work to have read would have been Remembrance of Things Past by Marcel Proust, but as it contains 1.2 million words, I thought maybe I'd skip that one. I also found myself personally immersed in memory over the past year, not least after the death of my father, aged 91, right around the time I knew I'd be doing this lecture. If you've lost someone close, you know how the memories swirl around you in the wake of death, how the unexpected moment of remembrance catches you off guard, how you're never far from memory. One of my favorite things is selecting presents for people they'll really like. And over the past months, that is when Dad's death has hit me, when I've found something he would have enjoyed. These memories sting a little, but they're also sweet. It's been a year of remembering with others, too. Here at King, we've been busy with remembering our college's past, the 150 years over which so many students have passed through this place, touched by faith and learning and friendship and fun. Some of my students have collected pieces of King's past for a display case, offering bits of that past to mark the anniversary year. Professionally, as Dr. McDonald mentioned before he left, another anniversary has dominated my recent months, the 500th anniversary of the posting of the 95 Theses. Scholars of the Reformation, like me, have been scurrying around churches and civic organizations, trying to assess the memory of that long ago event, trying to figure out how a moment still shapes us, though nothing of it yet remains, apart from books and manuscripts. And finally, I have been memorizing. For reasons that are not entirely clear to me, I started memorizing poetry about 2 years ago. This has not been systematic, but I find something very satisfying about committing beautiful and potent words to memory. So far, this is focused on the work of T.S. Eliot, whose 4 quartets now stands securely in my head, a 35-page poem which has a lot to do with memory. If you want to hear me recite it sometime, come by my office with an hour to spare and the slightest bit of flattery, and I'll regale you with the whole. And so it's been a year of memory for me, a year of thinking and reading and practicing memory. But all I can tell you authoritatively is this: I'm starting a second year of memory, because I don't have the answers that I'm after just yet. But even though I don't have the key to understanding everything about memory, I'll tell you today some of my memories. I'll suggest how memory can be a virtue, how memory reflects the image of God in us, and how I think my teaching is changing because of these things. Those themes are going to show up throughout the following, but to organize my talk, I want to suggest 3 ways of remembering, or rather 3 ways of being a rememberer. It's a hard word to say, rememberer. I'm going to have to do it multiple times, bear with me. 3 ways that have shaped my year. And since I'm a historian, I want to give you an image from the past for those 3 ways of being a rememberer. So please bear with me for a short history lesson. Imagine it's the year 817. Notice I went for an anniversary just like he said I would. 817, 1,200 years ago, and we're in England. Actually, there is no England yet. We're in a smaller kingdom called Northumbria on the northeast coast. This has been a wealthy kingdom and powerful, but it's facing a threat. The threat is not invasion, not yet anyway, but raids. Every summer for 24 years, our stability has been shaken by the unexpected arrival of wild, pagan raiders from across the North Sea, the Vikings. Arriving by ships, often at night, they take precious things such as gold and silver. Sometimes they take even more precious things, like people whom they will enslave. Sometimes they take lives, the most precious thing of all. But we're putting on a brave show, getting on with life as best we can. And for Northumbrians, that means we're having a party. We've met in a longhouse or mead hall, a big wooden house that is long. It's not so much a fort as it is an event facility. Here in the mead hall, we'll tell stories. Mead, by the way, is a drink made out of honey. This was the favored drink of the Vikings as well as the Anglo-Saxons. You can ferment a drink with honey. Here we'll tell stories, we'll make plans for our defense, and we'll bond ourselves over food and drink. And here in the mead hall are the 3 kinds of rememberer. The first, sitting to our left at the table, is carousing with the best of us, but there's a little gleam in his eye. This is a rememberer we're going to call the hoarder. Like the rest of us, he has precious gold and silver coins and a few bits of jewelry, but he's taken the precaution of hiding them in the earth. Only he and his family know the location of his gold and silver. And while this means he can't use them just now, he knows they're safe from the Vikings. Walking around the tables is our second kind of rememberer. We'll call him the host. The host is our king, and he welcomes us, boisterously slapping us on the back, often as we've just taken a sweet mouthful of mead. The host has a lot of gold and silver, not only coins and jewelry, but also weapons. And he's particularly interested in showing us his swords. Marvels of the blacksmith's art, these swords have withstood battle for generations. Here's one that belonged to his father, another from a past so distant that he doesn't know its origin, and one that was forged for him last year. He shows us the intricate inlay on the pommel, the knotwork on the guard, and the sharpness of the blade. He'll let us hold it even, but he never lets go. The host wants us to love these weapons, but he also wants to care for them. And however boisterous he may be, he's not going to let a bunch of drunk Northumbrians spoil his treasures. And finally, at the end of the room is our third rememberer. This one's different. He has no gold, no silver, no weapons, but all eyes are on him as the evening moves on. And the room becomes quiet as he raises his voice in a chanting song. This is the bard. And he is here to give away the treasure he has. Stories of the deep past, tales of victory and defeat, songs of the ancestors. The bard sings loudly, flings his treasure indiscriminately around the room, and hopes that the drunk Northumbrians will receive it. I hope that little sketch gives you enough sense of the image I want you to hold in mind. Three kinds of rememberers: the hoarder who keeps secrets, the host who invites us to love his treasure while guarding it, and the bard who sings his songs for anyone who will hear. Each of these three represents a vital, important way in which we are rememberers. And I hope that each gives us a sense of how we can remember virtuously as servants of God. Let's start then with the hoarder. The hoarder has something precious, but it's not something he can share. He'll guard it no matter what, even though he could profit from it otherwise. If he and his family die, the secret will die with them. And in fact, that did happen with many of the hoards that were buried to be kept safe from the Vikings. Even today, a lucky English farmer occasionally plows up a huge load of gold and silver whose whereabouts were never divulged by their hoarders. Hoarding memories is often necessary. Think right now. You have memories that you will never tell anyone because you must keep them safe. Perhaps they're an embarrassment to someone you love. Perhaps they'd get you in trouble. Perhaps these memories are secrets a friend told you. Hoarded memories are treasure in that they're precious. We have to keep them safe. But keeping them safe means, well, keeping them. It's important not to forget the hoarded memory. Just like the hoarder in the mead hall doesn't forget where his gold and silver are buried. Sometimes the hoarded memory does have a time limit. After someone has died, for example, or when the coast is clear, these memories can be shared. Here is a hoarded memory of mine from my grandmother, who died in 2011. It's a memory she gave me to hide, but I have no doubt she'd be happy for me to share it today. I'm not even sure that my mother and aunt, who are here with us today, know this. One day, a niece of mine had just gotten engaged and wanted to know everyone's engagement story. She was very bubbly. Tell me your engagement story. For whatever reason, possibly the bubbliness, my grandmother wouldn't share her engagement story. We plied her, we asked, we pleaded, but to no avail. But later, my grandmother told me, and it was clear that this story was for the hoard. She had accompanied her then suitor, my future grandfather, to a train station in Memphis after a visit so that he could go back to Nashville. And there on the platform he said, "When are we going to get married?" She said it just like that. I have no idea why she wanted this to be buried, but it was clear that she wanted me to keep that memory. And I share it with you now as a museum piece. Like those dug-up treasures, a charming little story of the start of a long and happy marriage. But I never told a soul while she was living. Now, that's obviously an innocuous little bit of hoarded memory, but many of you in this room have shared other bits of your hoard with me. You've told me things that I know you want me to keep secret, but you don't want me to forget. And so for the remainder of this session, I'm just going to list off those secrets. Won't name any names. You can just kind of assign who you think it goes to. We all need secret keepers. We need hoarders, and we need them to remember rather than forget. Sometimes the hoard includes things that hurt us, painful memories that are sharp as buried sword points. These memories still make us wince, no matter how long ago they took place, no matter how far we've moved on, and yet we must keep them. This is one of the truths behind talk therapy. I did check this with Chuck Thompson before saying what I'm about to say. If we don't keep the memory of the painful moments, we can transfer the fear or the hatred that they call up onto people who had nothing to do with them. If we don't remember where this hoard is, its sharp edges may pop up unexpectedly to wound us again and to wound others. The analogy isn't perfect, of course, but hoarding painful memories is an important function of memory. Hoarding memory can be a Christian virtue, too, as we imitate Christ by using prayer as a way of hiding our vulnerable, precious memories. As we entrust our deepest secrets, fears, pains to God in prayer, we know that they are kept in the safest earth, guarded and cared for, even healed. As we entrust the secrets of others to God, we do so in fidelity to our friends. This is not breaking your secrecy when you take this secret to God. Hiding their concerns in faith that healing and protection will be with them. But only a few memories are for hoarding. Because it turns out that my image of the mead hall in the year 817 is one that each of us has. And you have a mead hall, and you have a mead hall, and you have a mead hall. We all have a mead hall. Each of us is the host, and each of us has a treasure trove of memory, and each of us has guests with whom that memory will be shared. One of the many friends I asked about memory, I badgered about memory, suggested that a tremendous amount of our conversation every day is about memory. Can you imagine a conversation entirely without memory? Think about what you're likely to talk about today. March Madness, the Beauty and the Beast remake, U.S.-Russian relations, even, dare I hope, mead halls. You could talk about mead halls. In each case, much of your conversation will be grounded in memory, whether yours or someone else's. You couldn't talk about any of those things without memory. As hosts, then, my second kind of rememberer, we are not hoarding, but using memory. Memories that are dear to us and that we handle often. Our mead hall is full of them, some unused, some just waiting for us to stumble across them. Here, the image of the feast is helpful. So often, memory is triggered by taste and smell. In his 1.2 million word novel, Proust narrates a scene in which memories flood back simply because of the taste of a Madeleine cookie dipped in tea. I remember walking through the halls of First Presbyterian Church here in Bristol for the first time, and the smell triggered memories of Sequoia Hills Presbyterian in Knoxville, where I grew up. Apparently, Presbyterians all use the same cleaning products, and Presbyterians no cleaning products. Taste and smell, we stumble across these. They trigger memories for us as hosts. The host deals with memories unexpected and sudden, but also those that come out frequently. Not only the beautiful objects, the swords and the jewelry, but the pots and pans, the everyday memories. Because my wife, Heather, is from Northern Ireland, she has an accent that is clearly not from East Tennessee. She says she tells her life story at least once a week because someone asks about her accent. That memory for her has become one of everyday use. You can ask her yourself, she's back there. But But the swords and the jewelry, those are not the common memories. These are the memories that we cherish, that we bring out for special occasions. We have the good stories that we pull out when everyone needs a laugh, or when we think they explain everything. And we know each other's good stories, and we cue them up. I was at an event only last week when a friend queued up one of my better stories, then walked off to get something because he's heard it so many times. Han Ong. That's who that was. I was grateful for the assist. But there is something else about the good stories. We want to keep them safe. I often display in my mead hall memories of my children. Many of you know Kathleen and Peter, or you've seen them around campus. And you may know that they both have autism spectrum disorder. And much of my memory of that disorder is in my hoard. I have no desire to tell you of the times I've messed up as a father, or the humiliating struggles they've faced, or the dull details of being awake with them in the middle of the night, or enduring a meltdown. But there are memories I do want to share. I do want you to know about how creative they are, how funny they are, how sweet. Those memories are precious to me because they're my children. And much as I want you to love them, I also want to protect them. This is how the host has to negotiate the sharing of memory, because the host is not simply keeping drunken Northumbrians from messing up his stuff. The host loves these memories and the people who made them. And love is the virtue of the host, as faith is the virtue of the hoarder. By loving the memories, the host gives them honor and respect. For me, then, to share memories of my children is to show them off while taking care of them. I'm curating them, like a curator in a museum. Hence, as I come around the tables in my mead hall, let me show you a little memory of Peter. Once, Peter and I saw a rabbit outside. I pointed at it and said, "What's that?" "A bunny," said Peter, "the opposite of a squirrel." He's smarter than I am. I love that memory, and I want you to love it too. But I also want to care for my son, so I take care of that memory. Hosts also deal with memory that stretches back to those ghosts in the mead hall who no longer sit at the table. Like nearly headless Nick in Harry Potter, the memories of the host's ancestors are part of the furniture of the place. And these too must be loved. G.K. Chesterton called love and respect for our forebears the democracy of the dead, stating that if in democracy we object to men being disqualified by the accident of their birth, tradition objects to their being disqualified by the accident of their death. The best hosts don't just bring out their memories, though. They seek out the memories of others. I saw this in action recently, and it moved me deeply. I was with a group of friends at a historic site. While most of us were looking at objects, milling around and chatting, I noticed that one of our groups was with one of the docents, an elderly lady, and they were deep in conversation. I asked about this later and found that my friend had dived right into that docent's memories, the things that connected her to the historic site and to the area. And this, I realized, is the way a great host acts, making every guest comfortable by allowing each one to bring out his or her own treasures and admiring them. Asking someone to share a memory can be a great act of love. There's an old British expression for when you know someone is going to go see an old friend of yours. Remember me to him. Remember me to him. And the act of remembering as an act of love lies at the heart of Christian worship. When Jesus tells his disciples to eat bread and drink wine in remembrance of me, the heart of this enacted memory, this shared memory, this feast, is receiving and giving of love. And so in the Eucharist or the Mass or the Communion or the Lord's Supper, we remember in love. And although the root of the word is different, isn't it interesting that the bread can be called the host? Well, so much for my second rememberer. What about the bard over in the corner? Has the evening moved on to the point where we can sit for a bit and listen to him sing? It's the bard I have come to know best in my year of memory because I identify with him. Remember, I said that the bard doesn't have any gold or silver or treasure. I know this guy. The bard takes up his harp, strums a bit, and starts telling us about memories, but they aren't his own. He's telling us about memories far away, of people long dead who may be our ancestors or maybe not. His songs are not sugar-coated. Many tell of defeat and loss, but they're told with care and with art and with immediacy. The bard remembers things he didn't see, sings about events of which not a shred remains, though often the song connects to the people in the mead hall directly. His role in memory is not the secret of the hoarder, nor the loving care of the host. The bard's song is profligate. He sings whether or not the guests are paying attention. He sings a set of memories that we can, if we wish, catch and make part of our own. For these memories don't belong to the bard, and he's not their custodian. His job is to make the best song that he can make and give it away to as many as will have it. As I believe each of us must be hoarders and hosts, I believe each of us is a bard as well. When we take up memories, even if they aren't ours, when we take the time to learn them well enough to sing to others, when we share memory that can become part of anyone's story, we are bards. I don't mean that the bard doesn't care about the memory, but rather that he deals out memories as gifts, memories that belong to everyone. Vodka. Didn't know. It's a bit of a surprise. Good stuff. Victoria left it here. That's good. The fact is, I've come to think over the past year that my job as a teacher of history is to be a bard. What I try to do in class is to offer a song. You may be grateful that I don't actually attempt to sing. A song that offers deep, shared memories in a carefully constructed form. You don't have to learn my song, but bits of mine may become part of your song as you construct stories that transcend you to offer to others. I realized some years ago that I didn't remember much about the overall structure of my own Western civilization class that I had as an undergraduate, something I now teach. I just remember bits and pieces. But these are part of the way I can offer shared memory now, just like I hope some of you grasp bits and pieces from my song over in the corner, and you'll find them useful. In fact, what I'm trying to do this morning, by teaching a little about mead halls, is to do exactly that. I'm hoping that my little song of the mead hall may give you something to weave into your own memory, which one day you may pass on to someone else. I'm being a bard, about bards, to encourage you to be bards. How meta is that? The bard takes great pleasure in memory and in fitting memory to the moment. In the Christian tradition, the task of proclamation is bardic. We tell an ancient story far removed from ourselves. We pass it along profligately. We hope that others will hear and weave that story into their own stories. Whether in the pulpit or in conversation, that ability to tell God's long story of love and redemption calls each of us to be a bard. And just as God hoards our memories, Just as Christ is the host who cherishes and cares for us, so the Spirit sings back to us our own lives as part of the great story of the gospel. In the most astonishing feature of memory, God remembers us and sings us as part of the greatest bardic tale. Some of you may know The Lord of the Rings, the book rather than the movie, well enough to remember how much joy Sam Gamgee takes when his story is sung by the bards of Gondor. So we are sung by the Spirit of God. And as faith shapes the hoarder and love the host, so hope shapes the holy bard's song. I know this from experience. Having two autistic children, my wife and I can get lost in the demands of the daily. In the grind of dealing with their constant needs, we enter a survival mode that does not allow for song. But we hear it from time to time when we encounter things that happen less frequently. For a long time, this was our annual pilgrimage to Speedway and Lights. Every year, we'd notice development that we never could have seen up close. In the song, we could hear the hope we hadn't seen. There are probably other rememberers in the mead hall, but these are the three I know: the hoarder, the host, and the bard. Christian worship calls us to all three in prayer, Eucharist, and proclamation. And we imitate Christ as we pursue faith, love, and hope in them. If I have a bard's job as a historian, it's to encourage you to be rememberers in this way. But for now, I have a feeling that this bard is about to start reciting 4 quartets, and I, for one, am not staying for that. I've got Vikings to fight.
Well, in an extraordinary faculty lecture, we appreciate Dr. Dotterweich closing out the year for us. We have this super expensive, nice plaque for him. And to remember someone else, go and do good.
eBay later on if you're interested.